Mara.
Mara froze mid-sweep when she heard the boots, the slow heavy drag of them moving across the dirt like someone forcing each step out of an old memory, and she turned before she meant to, the broom still lifted in her hand as if caught between work and some unfinished grief. Eli Ward stood at the edge of the yard with dust on his face and tears caught in the crease beneath his eyes, and she felt her throat tighten before she could stop it, because no one said his name anymore, not after what happened, not after the fire and the bodies and the long 11 years in which nothing made sense. He whispered her name like it was something breakable. Mara. She didn't move. Don't say it, she said, trying to keep her voice steady, but the sound shook anyway because the sight of him felt like a crack in the day. He took one step closer and stopped, as if the dirt itself warned him. I had to come. She stared at him, taking in the same jaw, the same tired eyes, the same way he tried to stand tall even when guilt bent his shoulders. You don't get to walk back here and say that, she said. Not after all this time. He wiped his face with the back of his hand, leaving a streak of dust across his cheek. I'm sorry. She laughed once under her breath, not because anything was funny but because she felt anger rising like heat. You're sorry. That's what you bring me. He nodded as if nothing else lived inside him. I didn't know if you were still here. She lowered the broom slowly, letting the bristles drag across the ground. This ranch doesn't move, she said. People do. You did. You left. He looked away. I know. She stepped toward him, not close enough to touch, just close enough to see the fear in his eyes. You vanished when the sheriff's men came. You didn't say a word. You didn't look back. You didn't tell me anything. Eli swallowed hard. I couldn't. She shook her head. You could. You chose not to. A long silence sat between them while the evening settled, quiet and strange, like the world was holding its breath around a truth neither of them could name. He whispered, I didn't want you to see me like that. She stared at him for a long moment and felt the anger shift into something colder. Like what, Eli? A coward? He winced. Maybe. She felt her chest tighten again, because she wanted to hate him but something inside her still knew the way he used to look at her, the way he used to speak her name without breaking. You left me with everything, she said. With the smoke. With the screams. With the bodies. He looked sick with regret. I know. She stepped closer. Do you? He nodded slowly. Every night. She didn't want his guilt. She wanted the truth. Why now? She asked. Why come back? His mouth opened and closed like the words caught on something deep. I couldn't stay away anymore. She felt a sting of disbelief. 11 years. You stayed away just fine. No, he whispered. I didn't. She studied his face, the lines carved by old fear, and she knew something had hollowed him out long before he walked up this road. You look like a man running from something, she said. I am. Then keep running, she said. This ranch isn't a place for you anymore. He shook his head. I need to tell you something. She didn't want to hear anything from him, but the way he said it made her chest pull tight. Tell me what? He hesitated, looked at the ground, then lifted his eyes again. I shouldn't have come here, he said softly. But I couldn't let another day pass without seeing you. She stiffened. Don't talk like that. You don't get that right. He nodded. I know. But I have to say it anyway. Mara felt heat rise in her face. You don't get to want anything from me. I'm not asking for anything, he whispered. I just need you to know I'm not the man I was when I left. That man burned my life down, she said. No, he whispered. I left because I thought it would save you. She stared at him, stunned by the simplicity of the lie. You think that's better? He breathed out slowly, his voice breaking. Mara, please. She felt a strange pull inside her chest, something between rage and memory. Why now, Eli? She asked, and the question hung in the air like smoke that refused to fade. Mara didn't look away from him, not even when the evening wind brushed past her shoulders and carried the smell of dust and rusted metal from the barn, because she wanted to see the way Eli breathed when she asked the question he had no right to answer, and the moment the words left her mouth he drew in a thin, shaky breath like it hurt him to fill his lungs. Mara, he whispered, but she cut him off with a sharp lift of her hand. Don't say my name like that. Not after everything. Not after you walked into the night and left me standing in the smoke. His jaw tightened. I didn't want to leave you. She stepped closer, heat rising in her chest. You didn't want to leave me? Eli, I watched flames crawl across my family's roof while you ran. He winced and the sound he made was small, almost swallowed by the wind. I thought they'd kill me. Mara shook her head. You thought they'd kill you, so you let them come for us instead. He blinked fast, eyes wet. I didn't know what to do. You run, she said. You hide. But you don't abandon the people you say you care about. He looked like each word hit him. I cared more than you knew. She scoffed. You cared? When the sheriff's men dragged people into the yard? When the fire took half the house? When I screamed your name and you didn't turn back? He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. She kept going, because the truth had lived in her chest too long and she was done holding it still. Where were you when the bodies were pulled out? Where were you when I buried what was left of them? Where were you when I stood in front of the sheriff and he told me it was an accident, like I didn't see his men standing there the night before? Eli pressed his palm to his face, shaking. I wasn't strong enough. Mara stepped even closer, close enough to see the dirt along the collar of his shirt and the way his shoulders trembled. You weren't strong enough to tell the truth, she said. To tell me why you left. His voice cracked. I left because of what I saw. Her breath paused. What you saw? He nodded, wiping his face again like he was trying to pull himself together and failing. That night, he whispered, I didn't run because of the fire. I ran because something was in the woods. Mara stared at him, her heartbeat thudding slow and heavy. Don't lie to me. I'm not, he said quickly. I swear I'm not. I saw something standing past the trees. Something tall. Something watching everything burn. She felt anger spark again. A man? No, he said. Not a man. She clenched her jaw. So now you're telling stories? Mara, I know how it sounds. It sounds like you're trying to shift blame. I'm trying to tell you the truth, he whispered. She stepped back, needing space just to breathe. You expect me to believe that some shape in the woods gave you the right to disappear for 11 years? It wasn't just the shape, he said. It was the sheriff's men. The governor's men. The threats. Everything. I didn't know who was hunting who anymore. You should have told me, she said. You should have said something. Anything. Not just vanished. Eli's voice trembled. I thought keeping you away from me would protect you. She shook her head slowly, feeling the old ache twist inside her. You don't get to decide what protects me. I know, he whispered. I know that now. Too late. Maybe, he said. But I'm here now. And I came back because I can't outrun it anymore. Not the woods. Not the fire. Not what I saw. Mara looked at him, searching his face for the part of him she once trusted, the boy who used to sit on the fence and laugh with her, the boy who swore he'd always stand at her side. You didn't answer the real question, she said. Why now? Why today? He swallowed hard. Because it found me again. Her breath caught in her throat. What? The same thing I saw that night. I saw it 2 nights ago near the old trail. She felt a chill across her arms even though the air was warm. You're saying it followed you. I'm saying it never left, he whispered. She stared at him long enough to feel her anger soften into something sharper, something like fear mixed with memory. If what you're saying is true, she said slowly, then you should have run farther. I don't want to run anymore. You think I'll help you? No, he said softly. I hope you'll listen. She looked toward the old trail in the distance, the place where the woods pressed up against the edge of her land like a secret breathing against the earth. If you're lying, I'm not. She held his gaze, then took a slow step toward the barn and reached for a lantern hanging from a nail. Eli watched her hands shake as she pulled it down. Mara, what are you doing? She lit the wick, the flame catching fast. You're going to show me, she said, turning back to him with the lantern glowing between them like a small fragile truth. His breath hitched, the same shaky sound she heard when she first turned around. She didn't wait for him to speak. Let's go. The lantern flickered against his face as he nodded, and for the first time in 11 years, they walked toward the woods together. The lantern's flame swayed with each step as Mara and Eli walked toward the old trail in a silence that felt thick enough to touch, and she kept her eyes forward because looking at him too long made the last 11 years feel like they were pressing against her ribs. The dirt path stretched into the dusk like it had been waiting for them, and every sound around them felt louder than it should have, every crack of a twig or rustle of grass making the lantern flicker as if reacting to something unseen. Start talking, Mara said without looking at him. Eli nodded, breathing hard. It wasn't just the fire, he said. It wasn't just the sheriff's men. There was something else around your home that night, something watching. She tightened her grip on the lantern. You mean the thing you claim you saw in the woods? I didn't imagine it. She kept walking. You imagined plenty. You imagined I'd survive alone. You imagined I didn't need the truth. Eli flinched. I didn't know how to protect you. You didn't protect anyone, she said. You ran. He swallowed, his voice shaking. I want to tell you everything now. She stopped and turned to face him, the lantern between them casting a soft orange glow across his tired face. Then tell me. No more half words. No more shaking. Say it. Eli took a slow breath. The sheriff threatened me the night before the fire. Said the governor wanted your land and that anyone tied to your family needed to stay quiet or disappear. I told him I wouldn't help him. He said I'd regret it. Mara stared at him, her jaw clenched. You never told me that. I didn't want to drag you into it, he said. I thought if I stayed away from you, they'd leave you alone. They burned everything, she said. Leaving me alone wasn't an option for them. Eli looked away. I know that now. She stepped away from him and kept walking, the lantern lighting the narrow tunnel of the trail as they moved deeper into the quiet. You said there was more, she said. Say it. Eli nodded. There were stories in my family. Old stories. Things the wards used to whisper around the fire. About something that lives in these woods. Something that sees everything. She scoffed softly. This isn't the time for ghost stories. I didn't believe them, he said quickly. Not until that night. Mara lifted the lantern a little higher. What did you see, Eli? His voice dropped low. A figure. Tall. Still. Like it was made of the dark itself. It stood near the tree line while your house burned. I swear it was watching us, Mara. Watching everything. She stopped again, staring at him in the trembling light. And that's what you ran from? I ran because the sheriff's men saw it too, he said. They looked terrified. One of them pointed his gun at it and the thing didn't move. It was like it didn't care about us. Like we were nothing to it. You sound like a man trying to rewrite history, Mara said. Like you're looking for something to blame so you don't have to face what you did. Eli shook his head. I'm facing it. I'm here. I'm telling you the truth. She didn't speak for a long moment, and the only sound was the soft hum of insects rising with the night. If I believed you, she finally said, why would it come back after all this time? Because something's changing, Eli whispered. I've felt it for weeks. Like the air's wrong. Like the land remembers things it shouldn't. Mara didn't like the way that sounded. The land remembers everything, she said. We're the ones who forget. They kept walking until the trail narrowed and the woods pressed in on both sides. The lantern's glow danced across the bark of old twisted trees that looked as though they had been standing guard for generations. Eli slowed his steps. This is where I stopped that night. Mara didn't stop. Why here? Because, he whispered, it was standing right there. She lifted the lantern toward the place he pointed at, a patch of earth near the roots of a wide, ancient tree. For a moment she saw nothing but darkness, nothing but deep shadows and branches like reaching arms. You're sure? She asked. I've never been more sure of anything. Mara took one slow breath, then walked forward, the lantern swinging gently as she stepped into the thick of the woods. Eli stayed only a moment before following her. Mara, wait. She didn't turn around. You wanted to talk. Now we look. He hurried to catch up. I didn't bring you here to scare you. I'm not scared, she said. I'm angry. That's different. It matters, he said softly. She kept her eyes straight ahead, her voice low. Everything matters. Especially the parts you hid. Eli's breath grew uneven as they went deeper. I didn't hide the truth to hurt you. I hid it because I didn't know how to explain it. You didn't try. They reached the thick cluster of trees where the trail ended and the woods began to swallow the fading daylight. Eli stopped and touched the trunk of the old tree. This is where it was, he said. Right here. Like it was waiting. Mara held the lantern up, the flame bending in the soft breeze, her face half lit and half shadowed. And if it comes back? She asked. Eli's voice dropped. Then it'll find us together. She looked at him for a long moment, searching for anything solid in his trembling voice, then nodded once and stepped deeper into the dark, the lantern flickering as if it sensed something stirring just beyond its reach. The moment Mara stepped into the deeper dark, the air shifted, thicker and colder, as if the trees themselves were holding their breath, and she slowed only enough to lift the lantern higher while Eli stayed a half step behind her like he was afraid to touch the same shadows. The woods felt older here, older than memory, older than the stories whispered by families who never told the whole truth, and for a brief second Mara wondered if the silence carried more weight than it should. Do you hear that? She asked without turning. Eli swallowed. I hear everything. She kept walking until the roots beneath her boots twisted like knotted bones, and the faint sound reached her, soft, thin, almost like a breath caught in the wind. It brushed against her ear, a whisper that made her stop. Mara, her shoulders tensed, and she turned sharply. Don't, she said to Eli. That wasn't me, he whispered. She stared at him, lantern trembling slightly in her hand. Don't play games. I'm not, he said, voice shaking. I heard it the night I ran. The same voice. It sounded like my mother. But she died when I was 12. Mara looked through the dark, forcing her breath to stay steady. Voices don't crawl out of graves. These woods don't care about graves, he whispered. She ignored him and moved forward, boots crunching on dried leaves. The trees leaned in like towering witnesses, their branches shivering without wind. Another whisper slipped through the dark, clearer this time, closer. Mara, come back, she froze. Her throat closed. No, she whispered. Eli stepped beside her, eyes wide. What is it? She forced her jaw to lock in place. It sounded like my mother. Eli flinched. I told you. They remember things. These trees. This land. Land doesn't talk, she said. People do. And the people who burned my home didn't disappear into the bark. Her voice cracked, just once, before she caught it and pushed on, the lantern swinging as she scanned the ground for anything that didn't belong. She saw it then, something half buried beneath twisted roots, glinting faintly in the lantern's warm light. She crouched and brushed away the dirt. A badge. An old sheriff's badge, worn smooth around the edges as if the earth had tried to swallow it. Eli's breath hitched. That's his. She lifted it slowly, the cold metal pressing against her palm. The sheriff was here, she said. On this exact ground. Eli nodded. They dragged people into these woods. Everyone knew it. No one said it. She stood, staring at the badge like it carried every lie ever fed to her. My family died because of him. And because of the governor, Eli whispered. And because of me. Mara rounded on him, the lantern's glow turning her eyes sharp. You didn't swing the torch. But I knew something was coming, he said. I knew the sheriff was planning something. And I didn't tell you because I thought staying away would keep you out of it. It didn't, she said. Everything still burned. I know. People still died. I know, Mara. She stepped closer until the badge pressed into his chest through her fist. You owe me the truth. All of it. I'm trying, he said. But this place, it wants something from us. She shoved the badge into her pocket and took 2 steps deeper into the woods, forcing her anger to cut through the fear that settled on her skin like dew. Wanting something doesn't mean it gets it, she said. Another whisper drifted past her ear, and this one made her blood run cold. Mara, why didn't you save me? Mara spun, eyes wild. Stop, she whispered to the dark. Stop using her voice. Eli reached for her arm but didn't touch her. We should leave. No, she said, shaking her head as tears burned the edges of her vision. We came to find answers. We weren't meant to hear them like this. I'm not afraid. He stared at her. You should be. She kept her eyes fixed on the place where the voice had seemed to come from, her breath slow, her pulse sharp. They used this place, she whispered. The sheriff. His men. They used these trees to hide everything they did. Yes. But the land didn't forget. It can still show us. Show us what? Eli asked. She lifted the lantern. Where the truth is buried. The flame flickered hard, bending backward as if reacting to something unseen behind them. Eli turned slowly, eyes widening. Mara, he whispered, we're not alone. She didn't look back. Not yet. She kept her eyes on the trees ahead, her voice low and steady. We keep moving. Mara, we're not done, she said, gripping the badge through her pocket until the metal bit into her skin. Eli hesitated, fear trembling in his breath, but he nodded and stepped beside her again. Then follow me, he said, voice barely more than a whisper. She finally turned, lantern raised, watching him take the lead as the deeper shadows curled inward like the woods themselves leaned closer to listen. And together, they walked into the dark that waited for them. The path to the old well was swallowed in silence as Mara and Eli moved through the tight press of trees, the lantern glow sliding over bark scarred by years of storms and seasons, and Mara kept her jaw set because every step felt heavier than the last, like the land itself was remembering things she never asked to carry. The air thinned as they reached the clearing, a wide circle of dead grass where nothing dared to grow, and in the center sat the abandoned well tied to her family's land, its stones cracked and sunken like a grave with no marker. Mara stopped at the edge, staring down into the dark throat of it, and the cold that rose from inside felt older than either of them. This is where they brought him, Eli whispered. Mara didn't look at him. Say it straight. He swallowed, voice breaking. Your father. She felt her breath hitch but refused to let it show. He died in the fire, she said. I saw the house collapse. I saw the flames. Eli shook his head slowly. You saw what they wanted you to see. Mara turned on him with fire in her eyes. Don't you dare twist this now. I'm telling you the truth, he said, his voice trembling so hard the words barely held shape. He didn't die in that house. She stared at him for a long moment, lantern trembling in her hand. If you lie to me right now, she whispered, I will leave you in these woods. Eli stepped closer but didn't reach for her. I heard them talking, he said. The sheriff and 2 of his men. They dragged him out before the flames took the place. They said the governor wanted answers before anything was finished. Mara felt something sharp crack inside her chest, a soundless break that made her whole body go still. Why? She asked. Why him? Eli took a breath he didn't finish. Because he knew too much. Mara stepped closer to the edge of the well, the darkness below swallowing the lantern's light. About what? About the land, Eli whispered. About the deals the governor made with the sheriff. About the families that went missing. He tried to expose them. Mara closed her eyes for a moment, steadying her breath. And you knew this? Not all of it, he said quickly. But enough. She turned back to him with a hardness he had not seen since they were young. Then why did you leave me alone with the ashes? Eli's eyes filled again. Because I was next, he said. I heard them say it. They said if I talked, if I stayed near you, they'd bury me in the woods. So I ran. I ran because I thought I could come back when it was safe. But it was never safe. Mara's voice cut through the clearing. You could have told me. I didn't know if you'd believe me. You owed me the truth anyway. I know. Mara stepped around the well slowly, the lantern in her hand flickering against the stone. You said they brought him here, she murmured. Eli nodded. They used the well for things they didn't want found. Mara stared into the dark again. Did they kill him here? Eli took a long moment before answering. No, the word hit the air like a weight. Then where? She demanded. Eli hesitated, his voice breaking apart. He was taken, he said softly. Mara froze, gripping the cold stone of the well. Taken where? Eli looked toward the hills rising beyond the clearing, their shapes sharp against the fading sky. Up there, he whispered. There's an old path cut through the ridge. It leads to a place the sheriff's men kept hidden. I followed them once, years ago. I never made it all the way. I heard something in the dark. Something that made them run faster. Mara stared at the hills as if the truth sat behind the ridge waiting for her to step closer. Why didn't you tell me this the night it happened? Eli's voice cracked. Because I wasn't brave enough to say the words. She stepped toward him, anger and grief twisting together. You took everything from me by staying silent. I know, he whispered again, as if the phrase was the only rope he still had to hold on to. Mara lifted the lantern higher, light hitting the raw fear in his eyes. You said my father was taken. By who? Eli hesitated, then answered quietly. By the sheriff's men. But there was someone else with them. Someone I didn't recognize. Someone who didn't speak. Just watched. Like he wasn't part of this world. Mara's skin prickled as the woods pressed closer, the air too still, too expectant. You're telling me someone stood there and watched them drag my father away? Yes. And you don't know who it was? I don't, he whispered. But I know it wasn't a man from town. I know that much. Mara turned back to the well and let silence settle for a long moment before she spoke again. So he's not dead? I don't know, Eli said. But they didn't kill him here. They took him somewhere else. Mara closed her eyes, the weight of it hitting her so hard she had to steady herself against the stone. All these years, she whispered. I thought I buried him. Eli stepped closer, voice shaking. I'm sorry. Mara didn't look at him. She kept her eyes on the hills, her voice barely more than breath. Taken where? Eli followed her gaze to the ridge, the dark path cutting through it like a wound. Up there, he whispered. That's where we go next. Mara followed Eli up the ridge path with the lantern held high, its flame bending in the rising wind as if warning them to turn back, but she kept moving because she had no choice left after the truth he had given her. The ridge loomed above them like a long broken spine, the stones jagged and cold underfoot, and each step made the past feel nearer, as if her father's voice waited behind the next bend. Eli climbed with uneven breaths, sweat mixing with dust on his face, and Mara could see how hard he tried to hide his fear. "Keep talking," she said, her voice low. He nodded without slowing. "The old families controlled everything here. Land, law, stories, disappearances. People said the ridge swallowed men. I thought they meant the rocks. I didn't know they meant the ones in power." Mara stepped over a fallen branch. "You said they took him up here. Tell me why." Eli swallowed hard. He was asking questions about the missing families. He found things he wasn't supposed to. Letters, receipts, maps. I think he knew the sheriff was working with someone higher. Mara tightened her grip on the lantern. "The governor." Eli nodded. "And someone else. Someone who never spoke. Someone people feared more than both of them." They reached a narrow turn in the ridge. The wind grew colder, sharper, carrying a faint hum, like distant voices blending with the air. Mara paused. "Do you hear that?" Eli scanned the darkness. "I heard the same sound the night I followed them. I never forgot it." Mara kept moving, refusing to let the sound root fear in her ribs. "Tell me everything you know," she said. Eli's voice shook. "I saw the sheriff's men dragging someone up this path years ago. I think it was your father. I could hear him struggling. But I didn't see his face." Mara felt her stomach twist. "You should have said something back then." "I was afraid," he whispered. "You always were," she said quietly. The path widened as they reached the top of the ridge, revealing a stretch of bare earth and a small rundown shack pressed against the cliffside, its door hanging crooked like it had been torn open more than once. Mara approached it slowly. "What is this place?" Eli exhaled shakily. "A holding place. A hiding place. I think they kept the ones who knew too much here." Mara's lantern cast a soft glow across the shack's warped wood. She pushed the door open, and the hinges groaned like something waking after a long sleep. Inside, the air was thick, stale, heavy with a scent of old metal and forgotten years. Her lantern illuminated a table covered in dust. On it lay a set of familiar tools. Tools her father once carried everywhere. Mara froze. "These are his." Eli stepped inside behind her. "I know." Mara touched the tools gently, feeling the weight of the years lost. Her voice softened in a way she did not expect. "He was here." "I think so," Eli whispered. "Why would they bring him here?" "To make him talk," Eli said. "Or to wait for someone else to take him." Mara lifted her head. "Who?" Eli hesitated, then said, "The sheriff called him the Watcher. Said he saw everything in this land. Said he didn't answer to them but they answered to him." Mara frowned. "A man?" Eli shook his head. "I don't know. I only heard them speak of him like he wasn't human." Mara walked deeper into the shack, the lantern brushing its golden light across the cracked walls. On one board, words had been scratched deep into the wood. She leaned closer. "Eli, look." He moved beside her, eyes widening as he read aloud, "They will lie about everything." Mara's chest tightened. "My father wrote that." Eli nodded. "He tried to warn someone." Mara stared at the carved letters for a long time, her breath slow and trembling. "He was alive long enough to leave this. That means he fought. He didn't just vanish." Eli lowered his voice. "Mara, there's more." She turned to him sharply. "Say it." He pointed to another part of the wall, where faint carvings formed the outline of a symbol, something that looked like a circle split by a jagged line. "I saw this symbol before," he whispered. "On the sheriff's desk. On the governor's seal. It means chosen land." Mara felt her anger sharpen. They thought they could choose what to take, who to ruin. Eli nodded slowly. "Your father tried to stop them." Mara walked out of the shack, needing air, needing space to breathe past the crushing truth settling onto her shoulders. The ridge stretched before her like a long scar in the land, quiet except for the rising hum that pulsed like distant murmurs. Eli stepped out behind her. "There's a place beyond this ridge," he said softly. "I never had the courage to go there. But I think that's where they took him." Mara turned toward him, her voice steady even as her heart pounded. "Show me." Eli looked afraid. "Are you sure?" Mara stared at the dark cut of the ridge trail ahead. "I've been sure since the moment you told me he was taken." Eli nodded slowly, then began walking toward the far edge of the ridge where the land dipped into shadow. Mara followed, lantern held close, the hum in the air growing louder with every step. Her mind churned with fear and fury and something deeper, something like a truth rising from the ground itself. The trail narrowed again, forcing them close to the cliffside. Eli's voice was barely above a whisper. "This is the place I swore I'd never return." Mara kept moving. "We don't get to turn back now." The hum grew louder, clearer. It almost sounded like words. Eli's hands trembled. "Mara, if we go down there, we might see something we can't forget." Mara stepped past him, lantern lighting the descent. "Then we remember it together." He stared at her for a long moment, then followed her down the dark path as the ridge closed behind them like the land had been waiting for this moment to breathe again. The descent into the hollow behind the ridge felt like dropping into another lifetime, the lantern light pushing only a thin circle through the heavy dark as Mara and Eli moved down the narrow cut of earth, and every step made the air colder, thicker, as if the land held its secrets in its lungs. At the base of the ridge sat a cluster of broken stones that looked like the remains of an old foundation, and beside them, half hidden by weeds and years of silence, was a wooden door set into the ground. Mara stared at it with a slow, rising dread. "This is it?" she asked. Eli nodded, his breath shaking. "The cellar. The sheriff's men used it for the ones they didn't want found." Mara knelt and brushed dirt from the edges, her fingers shaking despite her steady voice. "Open it." Eli hesitated. "Mara, open it," she repeated, sharper now, leaving no space for his fear. Eli gripped the rusted handle and pulled. The old door groaned like something inside resisted waking, but it opened with a long creak that sent a cold shiver up Mara's spine. The lantern light spilled down a narrow wooden staircase. Mara stepped first. Eli followed her into the thick dark. The air smelled of damp wood and old metal, and the stairway swallowed the sound of their breaths as they descended. At the bottom, the cellar widened into a low room lined with shelves, boxes, and crates stacked like forgotten coffins. Old wanted posters covered the walls, faces of men and women long gone, ink faded and corners curled. Mara lifted the lantern and froze as her gaze landed on a cluster of papers nailed in a crooked row. Her family name was printed across each one, stamped in red like a warning. Her father's name. Her mother's. Even hers. "They marked us," she whispered. Eli's voice came out thin. "The sheriff kept records of anyone who got in the way." Mara stepped closer, her pulse thudding loud in her ears. "Why plaster our names down here?" "Because they were planning something bigger," Eli said. "The governor wanted all the surrounding land. Your ranch was the last piece." Mara turned sharply, lantern casting moving shadows across the room. "And you knew?" Eli flinched. "Not everything. But enough," she said. "You knew enough to run." "I didn't know they'd go after your family," he whispered. "I thought they were just trying to push you off the land." Mara took a slow step toward him, anger cutting through her voice like a blade. "You saw them drag people into these woods. You knew what they did to anyone who resisted. And you thought they'd stop at pushing?" Eli's eyes filled, but he didn't look away. "I didn't know how to save you. You could have told me the truth. I was trying to protect you." "From what?" she demanded. "From grief? From danger? Or from the coward you were becoming?" Eli's voice broke. "From everything. From what I saw in the woods. From the sheriff. From the watchers. From the lies. I didn't know who to trust. I didn't know if they'd come after you if they knew you were tied to me." Mara stared at him, the lantern trembling in her hand. "You thought leaving me would save me?" "Yes." "It didn't," she whispered. "It destroyed everything." Eli's voice collapsed to a whisper. "I know." Mara stepped back, her foot brushing a loose board. It lifted just enough to reveal the faint outline of something underneath. She knelt and pried it open. Beneath the board lay a stack of old letters bundled with twine. She pulled them out, her hands shaking. "These are my father's," she said. Eli crouched beside her. "What do they say?" Mara opened one, her eyes skimming the faded ink. "He was sending warnings. To the towns around us. To the other ranchers. He said something was coming. Something tied to the governor. Something tied to the ridge. He begged them to speak up before it was too late." Eli whispered, "No one ever did." Mara's throat tightened. "Because fear is louder than truth." Another hum rose from the walls, deeper now, like a low vibration pushing through the wooden beams. Eli stiffened. "Do you hear that?" Mara nodded slowly. "It's been growing since we came down here." The hum thickened, almost forming the shape of words. She took a step back, scanning the walls, her eyes catching on another set of carving scratched into the wood near the door. She lifted the lantern closer. "Eli," she whispered. "Look." The words were jagged, desperate, carved by a shaking hand. "I am still here." Eli's breath left his chest in one hard exhale. "Mara," the door above them slammed shut with a violent crack. Mara jumped, spinning toward the stairs. Darkness sealed the exit. Eli ran up the steps and pushed against the door, but it didn't budge. "It stuck," he said, voice rising. "Something's holding it." Mara lifted the lantern higher. "Stop," she said, her voice steady even as her heart pounded. "Listen." The hum deepened, wrapping around them like a presence moving through the walls. Something whispered her name again. "Mara." Eli backed away from the door, trembling. "It knows us." Mara gripped the lantern tightly. "This place was built on lies," she said. "Lies my father tried to expose." "And they killed him for it," Eli whispered. Mara's voice fell to a quiet, steady burn. "Maybe they did. Or maybe they didn't. But I'm not leaving this place without the truth." Eli stared at her, fear widening his eyes. "What do we do?" Mara turned toward the deeper shadows of the cellar, the lantern flame bending as if pulled forward by something unseen. "We start by listening," she said softly. "Because whatever's down here remembers what they did. And it's time we hear it." The hum swelled around them like the cellar itself had begun to breathe, and Mara stepped toward the dark, her father's name carved into the walls behind her as if urging her forward. The darkness swallowed Mara and Eli the moment she stepped deeper into the cellar, the lantern flame flickering wildly as if something unseen breathed against it, and the thick black around them felt alive, shifting just beyond the reach of light. Eli stayed close behind her, his footsteps uneven, his breath shaking like he expected the dark itself to reach out and pull him under. Mara lifted the lantern higher, but the shadows climbed the walls in long, trembling shapes that didn't belong to either of them, stretching and curling like they were remembering every scream ever swallowed by this place. "Mara," a voice whispered from the far corner, soft and broken, shaped like someone who used to know her. Mara froze, her body turning rigid. "Don't," she whispered without looking at Eli. "That wasn't you." Eli shook his head quickly, fear tightening his throat. "It wasn't." Mara took a slow step forward, the lantern pushing a small trembling circle of gold across the dirt floor. "Show yourself," she said to the dark. "If you want something from us, then show it." The darkness shifted, almost like it breathed. Another voice drifted across the room, this one low and cracked. "Why didn't you save me?" Mara's lungs tightened. It was her mother's voice. She felt heat rush behind her eyes, but she forced herself not to break. "Stop using her," Mara whispered, her voice trembling but strong. "Use your own voice." Eli moved closer. "We need to get out of here." "Not until I know the truth," she said. The dark responded with another whisper, this one sounding like Eli. I ran because I saw you burn. Eli's breath hitched. That isn't me, he said, shaking. I never said that. No, Mara whispered, but you thought it. The air thickened, wrapping around them with a weight she felt deep in her bones. Something scraped lightly against the wall, like fingers dragging across old wood. Mara turned the lantern, and the flame stretched toward the far corner where the carvings cut into the board seemed to move, as if rewriting themselves in real time. The words changed, lines forming and unforming until they shaped something new. Take back what they stole. Eli let out a choked sound. Mara, your father wrote that. She stepped closer, her voice steady even as fear shook through her spine. He wants us to finish what he started. The lantern dimmed suddenly, the flame shrinking as if pinched by invisible fingers, and the cellar plunged into a heavier dark. Eli grabbed Mara's arm. It's getting stronger. Whatever this is. Mara didn't move. It's not a monster, she whispered. It's memory. It's grief trapped in these walls. It's every lie they buried under this land. Then why does it sound like our voices? Eli asked, his breath trembling. Because it knows us, she whispered. It knows what they took from us. It knows what we lost. The dark pressed closer, whispering again, layers of voices folding into one another, the sheriff's orders, her father's warnings, her mother's screams, Eli's guilt, her own silence. Mara covered her ears, shaking her head. Stop, she said. Stop using them. Eli stepped beside her. Tell it what you want. The lantern fluttered weakly. Mara lifted it like a challenge. Tell me what happened to my father, she said to the dark. Tell me where he went. For a long moment, nothing moved. The cellar felt dead. Then the whisper came, low, close, almost touching her ear. He never left. Mara turned sharply. What does that mean? The whisper shifted again, forming a single word that crawled across the room like a shiver. Below. Eli's eyes widened. There's nothing below us. Just dirt. No, Mara said quietly. She lifted the lantern and scanned the floor. Dust, boards, crates. But the far right corner, she saw a faint seam in the dirt, a line that didn't match the rest of the floor. She walked toward it slowly. Help me, she said. Eli rushed to her side, and together they brushed away the dirt, revealing a heavy plank half-rotten with age. Mara dug her fingers under the edge and pulled until it lifted with a deep groan. The dark below it exhaled cold air. A hidden crawl space. Eli stared. This wasn't here last time. You didn't stay long enough to see it, she said. The whisper returned, drifting up from the hole. He's waiting. Mara felt her heart twist painfully. Father. Eli shook his head. Mara, we don't know what's down there. I know, she whispered. But that's where the truth is. Eli grabbed her wrist. We can't go down there. She looked at him with a steadiness he had never seen in her. I'm not asking you to. He hesitated, then let go. Mara knelt at the edge of the crawl space. If you want me to stop, she whispered into the dark, then show me something real. The air thickened. A soft glow pulsed from somewhere below, like the faintest trace of reflected lantern light. Eli stiffened. Mara, she lowered the lantern into the opening, its flame stretching into the narrow space. He was here, she whispered. I can feel it. Eli looked at her helplessly. What now? Mara pulled the board farther open, the air rushing cold against her face. Now, she said, we keep going. The lantern flame surged as if answering her, and she gripped its handle tightly. Eli breathed hard, torn between fear and something like loyalty. Then I'm going with you, he said. Mara looked at him for a long moment. Fine, she whispered. But remember this, down there, we listen first. The cellar hummed again, louder, deeper, as if the dark itself knew what they were about to do, and Mara stepped into the opening with Eli beside her, both of them sinking into the place where the truth waited like a buried heartbeat. Mara stepped out of the crawl space first, her hands covered in dust and her breath uneven, but something in her had gone still, as if the darkness behind them had carved a new resolve into her bones. Eli climbed out after her, shaking, his legs unsteady as he pushed the cellar door open from the inside. Daylight rushed in, blinding at first, a harsh reminder that the world above them still moved even when the truth below had been waiting in silence for years. Mara stood in the clearing beside the ridge, her face pale but calm in a way Eli had never seen, and she stared at the trees as if she finally understood the shape they made when they leaned toward her. Eli wiped his hands on his shirt and spoke through a tight breath. "Mara, whatever that was down there, it wasn't meant for us." She didn't look at him. "It wasn't meant for lies," she said. "It was meant for truth." Eli swallowed. "We don't know what we heard." "I do." She turned to face him, her voice steady. "I heard my father. I heard what they did. I heard what they took." Eli lowered his eyes. "I'm sorry." She stepped closer, her expression no longer sharp with anger but carved with something clearer. "Tell me the rest," she said. "All of it." Eli shook his head slowly. "There's nothing left to tell." Mara held his gaze, unblinking. "You're lying." He hesitated, then breathed out. "I loved you," he whispered. "I loved you then. I love you now. And I thought staying away would save us both." Mara looked at him the way someone looks at a truth that's too late to matter. "Your love didn't save anyone," she said softly. "It only kept you safe." Eli flinched. "I was scared." "So was I," she said. "But fear doesn't excuse silence." Eli stepped forward, voice trembling. "You don't know what the sheriff said to me. What his men said. They told me they'd got the truth out of me. They told me the governor owned every inch of this land. They told me anyone who stood against them disappeared." Mara nodded once. "And you believed them?" "I was a boy," he said. "I didn't know how to fight them." "None of us did," she whispered. "But we still paid the price." Eli ran a shaking hand through his hair. "I should have come back sooner." Mara nodded again, her voice quiet but firm. "Yes. You should have." A long silence settled between them, not sharp like before but heavy with understanding. Eli finally spoke. "What now?" Mara turned toward the path back to the ranch. "Now I take back what they stole." Eli watched her walk a few steps, then called after her. "Mara, you don't have to do it alone." She stopped but didn't turn. "I've been alone for 11 years, she said. "I know how to carry myself." "Let me help you," he said, voice cracking. Mara faced him again, her expression unreadable. "Why should I trust you now?" Eli's breath faltered. "Because I'm done running." Mara studied him for a long, silent moment, seeing the guilt carved into him like scars he could never hide. "Tell me one thing," she said. "Why did you really come back?" Eli swallowed hard. "Because I saw the same thing again," he whispered. "The same watcher. The same shape in the woods. It stood at the edge of the trail 2 nights ago, and when I looked at it, I heard your father's voice. I think it wanted me to come back." Mara didn't move. "Or it wanted me to hear the truth," she said. "Through you." Eli nodded slowly. "Maybe." Mara's shoulders lowered, her breath steady. "It doesn't matter," she said. "What matters is what I do next." Eli stepped forward carefully, like approaching a wounded animal. "Then what do you want me to do?" Mara looked down the trail toward her ranch, the place she had spent years rebuilding on top of ashes and silence. "Walk with me," she said. "But don't speak unless I ask." Eli breathed a shaky sigh of relief. "Anything you want." Mara turned and began walking, Eli matching her steps a few feet behind. The ridge fell quiet behind them, the cellar sealed once more, the hum fading back into the bones of the land. for the first time since stepping into the woods, Mara felt a strange calm settle in her chest. Not peace. Not forgiveness. Just clarity. The truth was hers now, and the road back to the ranch stretched before her like something waiting to be reclaimed. Mara reached the ranch with Eli a few steps behind her, the sky fading into a soft bruised blue that made the broken fence posts cast long shadows across the yard, and she stopped near the spot where she had first heard his boots, the broom still lying where she had dropped it, as if the day had never moved forward at all. Eli slowed to a halt, unsure if he was allowed to stand beside her or if his presence still counted as a trespass. Mara didn't look at him at first, she just stood there, breathing in the silence, feeling the land beneath her feet like something alive and waiting. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet but steady. "This is where everything started," she said. Eli nodded weakly. "And where everything ended?" Mara turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "Not ended," she said. "Interrupted." Eli swallowed hard. "Mara. I know nothing I say will fix what I broke. But I came back because I needed you to know that I never stopped thinking about that night. Or about you." Mara didn't look moved by the words, but she didn't turn away either. "You say you loved me," she said. "But love without courage isn't love." Eli lowered his head. "I know. You should have come back years ago." "I should have come back the next morning," he whispered. She stepped closer, studying him the way someone examines an old wound to see how deep it actually goes. "Why didn't you?" Eli's voice cracked. "Because every time I tried, I saw the fire again. I saw the sheriff's men. I saw the watcher in the trees. And I heard your father's voice telling me to stay away." Mara's breath caught, but she didn't look surprised. "You think he wanted you gone?" "I thought so," Eli whispered. "But maybe I was wrong." Mara nodded slowly. "You were." Eli raised his eyes, tears filling them. "Then why do I feel like I failed him?" Mara took a breath, her voice softening just a fraction. "Because you did," she said. "But you're not the only one." Eli blinked. "You didn't fail him." "I failed him every time I believed the lies they told me," she said. "I failed him every time I tried to bury the truth because it hurt too much to look at." Eli shook his head. "You were a girl." Mara's voice tightened. "Girls grow up when the world forces them to." She stepped past him, walking toward the side of the house where the last beam of sunlight clung to the wall. Eli watched her silently until she stopped and faced him again, something heavy but calm settling behind her eyes. "The ranch is mine now," she said. "Not because the sheriff allowed it. Not because the governor forgot about it. But because it survived." Eli nodded, tears slipping down his face. "And you survived." Mara's voice was steady. "I didn't survive. I rebuilt." Eli stepped closer, his breath quick and uneven. "Mara, if you let me stay, I'll help you fight whatever's left. I'll help you take it back. All of it." She studied him carefully, searching for truth behind his trembling voice. "You think you can stand with me now?" "I can try," he said. "I can be better than I was." "Trying won't be enough," she said. "You either stand or you don't." Eli nodded. "Then I stand." Mara looked at him for a long moment, weighing not just his words but the years between them. "You came back to fix your guilt," she said. "Not to help me." Eli flinched. "At first, yes. And now?" Mara asked. Eli took a shaky breath. "Now I'm here because I can't walk away from the truth anymore. I'm here because your father's voice won't leave me alone. And because when I saw you today, I knew I couldn't lose you again." Mara's expression didn't soften, but something inside her loosened just enough for her to speak without anger. "Say my name," she said quietly. "If you mean it." Eli stepped closer, tears blurring his vision. "Mara," she shook her head. "Not like that. Say it the way you said it when you walked into this yard." Say it the way you said it 11 years ago. Say it with the truth. Eli inhaled shakily, his voice breaking open. Mara, he whispered, and the word came out soaked in every regret he had carried for more than a decade, every fear, every lost chance, every night he saw her in the flames he could not forget. Mara closed her eyes for a moment, letting the sound settle into her chest like a final piece falling into place. When she opened them again, she stepped past him and walked toward the front of the ranch, the lantern still hanging from her hand. "This land is mine," she said. "My father's truth is mine. The past is mine. And whatever comes next belongs to me." Eli wiped his face. "What do you want me to do?" Mara turned, her face calm. "Nothing," she said. "Not until I decide you've earned a place here." Eli nodded slowly, accepting it. "Then I'll wait." Mara stepped onto the porch, looking out over the land that had held grief and silence for too long. The air felt different now, lighter but still watching, as if the ridge itself breathed with her. She set the lantern down, her voice low but certain. For the first time, she whispered, "I'm not afraid of the truth." And the ranch, quiet and waiting, seemed to listen.